Today, we're diving into what could be the most overlooked way to build wealth this year in 2025, and it's Canada's oil stocks. These companies have been systematically overlooked by Wall Street, and they are set up for a beautiful rally in both 2025 and in the next 5-10 years. We are seeing massive billions of dollars invested into infrastructure. We are seeing huge shifts in sentiment and policy. And we are seeing a national priority being placed on Canada's energy resources. And today I'm going to talk about 5 specific Canadian companies that I think are fantastic investments for an investor looking to get in on this opportunity right now in 2025. But first, before we dive into those 5 companies, we need to talk about this market. Now, if you already know all of this, feel free to skip ahead. But Canada's energy market has spent maybe 10 years in limbo. We basically have one partner to export to here from Canada, and it almost all goes straight south to the US, where it's refined and shipped through the Gulf onto the markets of the world. And because we've only really had one market for generations, we have gotten a lower price for Canadian crude oil and natural gas. However, things have started to turn around. First up, let's talk about TMX, which is this massive, eventually government-sponsored program to transport oil from the sort of heartland of Canada's energy infrastructure up in central Alberta, northeast BC, down to the coast at Vancouver, where it can then be shipped off through the Pacific onto the markets of the world. This was a massive project, hugely controversial at the time, taken over by the government when it ran into cost overruns that finally was put into full use over the last year, and we're now seeing actual impact on these companies. We've seen lots of companies talk about how they've gotten higher prices. Companies have fought for the ability to transit oil through this pipeline. And that's even at the current pricing. And there's been stories about how because the government needs to make back the money they spent on this pipeline, they're charging a huge amount. But over the long run, it's going to be a game changer, and companies have already benefited. Best part, it's not the only big story. We've also got LNG Canada. We've talked about this on the channel. Goes online halfway through this year, if all things goes well, and it's going to revolutionize our natural gas industry because we're going to be able to sell our natural gas at a much higher price, very similar to TMX. Both of these projects are just the first. It has been in the national discussion here in Canada to get as many more projects like these built as fast as possible. Because now there's this big conflict between Canada and the United States in the world of trade, and Canadians and Canadian companies and the Canadian public is looking to ship our products to other markets that are going to give us a higher price versus selling it at a discount. This means that for probably the first time in the last 10-15 years, we have seen a real opportunity for massive growth in the Canadian energy space. And it seems like Wall Street's missed it. The companies that should be running on this news have been held in limbo, partially because of the fear and uncertainty in the market, but also partially because this is a very localized story. It's very industry specific. And while it's going to create huge wealth, there's a lot of stocks that are still at prices investors can absolutely afford to pay and that represent a fantastic deal. Let's talk about the first company on the list here, which is Canadian Natural Resources, ticker symbol CNQ. I've talked about this stock lots on the channel. This is the volume company in Canada when it comes specifically to liquids. We're talking 1.5 million barrels daily. That's a huge amount. They've secured significant capacity on TMX. It says here they have an estimated 12% production growth baked in this year. That's from 2024. They predicted that, not including the potential changes coming in 25. Their oil sands and thermal projects break even at about $35 a barrel, which is dramatically lower than the current price. It means there's a huge opportunity. They're going to be able to navigate any sort of short-term price challenges. And the best thing is this is the scale player. They have the most assets. They have the most ability to acquire new ones. They can acquire smaller companies. They have been absolutely ferocious about growing through acquisition. There's no reason to believe they won't do it now. And with a potential opportunity to grow without worrying about the constrained industry size, without having to worry that if you grow too much and nobody else shrinks, that it's a zero-sum game, they're going to be able to massively expand. And they are really very profitable. They have demonstrated cutthroat profitability. There's no reason to believe that they wouldn't be able to leverage that size and that ability to grow, that willingness to push and just go absolutely parabolic this year and into the next couple of years, once there are a couple projects out there that might offer that opportunity. Jumping to number 2 on the list here, we have Tourmaline. I've talked about this company lots on the channel, and specifically, they are the king of Canadian natural gas. Absolute first place by far. They're producing a huge amount, and they're also somewhat expanding their liquids production. So they will definitely benefit from the oil trade as well, but really their story is natural gas. And of course, the story of natural gas is all about LNG Canada. Talked about them lots recently on the channel. They are a fantastic opportunity right now as an investment. They have specifically put themselves in a huge position to grow fast. This is because they've been waiting for LNG Canada to come online, but thanks to the shifting market dynamics, there are lots of other projects that this increased production could supply, and they will definitely take advantage of any opportunities presented to them. They've demonstrated great management, great leadership in the space, and I think they are just about perfectly positioned to grow rapidly and meet demand. That's why they're on the list. That's why they're the number 2. Now, number 3 here is Synovus. They're an interesting choice, I think. They're pretty large. I mean, they're aiming growth to about 825,000 barrels a day, which is pretty large. They're also an integrated player. They have integrated refining. It says they've secured sales for about 35% of their oil sands production to ship via TMX. So they're going to be able to lock in some of those specific market prices, which is fantastic. And they're also small enough to still sort of be a little under the radar for that big Wall Street money. It means they haven't seen the kind of growth in their stock price that some of their competitors that are a little bit larger, more storied, more well-known have. Which means they might just be a fantastic opportunity, and they might remain a good opportunity for a little bit longer, thanks in part to their smaller size and their ability to sort of go under the radar. Number 4 on the list is Imperial Oil. This is ticker symbol IMO. I have not talked about these guys yet here on the channel. And in part, it's because they have a very storied history. They're sort of one of these integrated giants, one of the old guard in Canada, and because I have personal family connections to the company, and usually I try to avoid any sort of conflict of interest, but in a video like this, we have to talk about them. They are simply a fantastic company. Now, they are growing production to about 450,000 barrels a day in 25, but the real story here is innovation and cost efficiency. They're aiming at $18 a barrel in cost at their flagship operations, just so dramatically low, and they've driven the stock price up pretty well with that decreased cost of oil. Now imagine what's going to happen when you see production ramp up, when you see growth opportunities present themselves. If they can get through basically any challenge with that dramatically low cost basis, there's nothing to stop them from growing rapidly, from taking risks, from expanding even faster than some of their peers, because they can afford to, because their break-even price is going to be so low. I think it's a real opportunity. I think it's a company that definitely deserves a look. I know it is one of those companies you think of as old and boring. It looks better on a pension fund than it does in a growth investor's portfolio, but with the opportunity in this market, it does fit. Could be a huge turnaround play. Speaking of turnarounds, we're jumping to number 5. That is Suncor, ticker symbol SU. Again, not a company I've really talked about much on the channel. Definitely a storied company with a lot of history here. And it means a lot of investors have sort of, especially in the Canadian market, tried this company, been burned. They did definitely suffer a little bit at the end of Canada's last bull cycle, but I think that specifically since 2023, when I see they have some leadership changes, there's been some real growth and some leadership in their efficiency. They're targeting 825,000 barrels daily in 2025. They've already cut costs up to 15% since 22, which is pretty huge. And And with growth in this industry, very similar to Imperial, you could see this story turn around really quick. Best part, this company, very similar to Imperial, has had some, difficult patches, let's say, in the past. And with that, there are a lot of investors that haven't been willing to give them another shot, who have been willing to step into the market, but instead have picked CNQ, have picked Tourmaline. These companies, Imperial and Suncor, being the integrated giants, being the old guard, being the boring, safe retirement portfolio stock, is gonna be missed by some investors. But I think that's a mistake. I really do think these companies will grow just like the industry. I think they will benefit from the industry's growth. And I think that they have some really fantastic assets, some really fantastic infrastructure that's going to provide great value. And while it might be missed at first, they might not be the first movers in this industry. They might not be the first movers in a coming rally. I do think they will move. And I do also think that thanks to their sort of under the radar nature, they might move slower. You might have a better opportunity to get a better price for a longer period of time. Just some food for thought. On top of those 5 companies, I do think there are lots of smaller companies where you could choose to take on a bit more risk in return for sort of a larger runway. And we could absolutely talk about those here on the channel. I would be totally happy to talk about those companies. But those are really the 5 big players, the 5 companies I think will probably benefit the most business-wise. And I also think their stocks are going to appreciate a huge amount from the coming rally in this industry. I really do think there's some fantastic catalysts, let's say, that are just lining up perfectly. And I think we will see some big changes. We're going to see some volatility. We've got some political stuff going on in Canada. Obviously, we've got the trade tensions going on. But I think you're going to see 1 or 2 big positive news stories break. And you're going to see that set the bull run for these companies and for this sort of industry. I think you're going to see a lot of stocks move pretty quick. If you want to see that video talking about some of the smaller cap opportunities, I would love to make it. Just let me know in the comments down below. And if there are any other industries in Canada you think are providing an asymmetric return, you get massive growth and don't have to risk that much, I would love to hear about it. And I'd love to talk about it here on the channel. Please do let me know in the comments. And with that being said, if you made it this far in the video, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel. It makes a massive difference for us and it doesn't cost anything. With all that being said, I hope I see you in the next one.